There's a feeling that runs through almost every life, yet very few people know how to name it. It's that silent exhaustion, that inexplicable heaviness that never shows up on a medical exam. You wake up tired. You move through the day as if you're carrying something invisible on your back. And when night comes, even though you didn't face any big battles, you feel drained, emptied out, as if something you can't see has been quietly pulling the life out of you. What if I told you that maybe you've been walking through life with two doors wide open, doors Jesus already taught you how to close, but that you, out of distraction, leave standing open every single day? I'm not talking about physical doors. I'm talking about invisible gateways inside you, openings in your emotional field, your awareness, your spiritual energy. Openings through which thoughts that aren't yours enter. Emotions that didn't start in you slip in, influences that drain you without you realizing it. And here's the most intriguing part. Jesus knew this. He understood how fragile the human soul is when exposed to the world. That's why he didn't leave you unprotected. He gave you two spiritual keys, simple, practical, transformational. But like any key, they only work if you actually use them. Throughout history, the great sages of humanity have all spoken about the need to guard the heart, protect the mind, and shield the inner life. Stoic philosophers taught about watching your thoughts. Eastern masters taught about witnessing the mind without identifying with it. But Jesus, with that deep simplicity only he had, condensed everything into two words: watch and pray. It sounds simple, almost obvious. But do you really understand what that means? Are you actually applying this in your life, or just repeating it as a nice phrase stored somewhere in your memory? Because here's the truth. Most people live spiritually exposed. They move through life like someone driving a car with the windows down in the middle of a storm. Everything gets in, the noise, the rain, the cold. And over time, they get used to it. They get used to living soaked, shivering, convinced that this is normal. That life is just like this, heavy, exhausting, full of irrational fears and endless inner conflict. Have you ever felt like something is draining you even when nothing bad has happened? Ever woken up tired, as if you spent the whole night fighting something invisible? Ever walked into a room and felt your chest tighten, your energy drop, as if you'd absorbed the emotional weight of everyone around you? That's not your imagination. That's not weakness. That's what happens when you move through life without conscious spiritual protection. And what's even more striking is that Jesus never told his followers to survive the world purely on their own strength. He knew that would be impossible. On the contrary, he handed them practical spiritual tools, instruments of protection, methods for inner balance. But like all deep wisdom, those tools got diluted over the centuries. They turned into catchphrases, memorized verses, words repeated without awareness. Today, in this video, you're going to realize that Jesus gave you far more than a spiritual tip. He gave you a tool to survive emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually in a world that pulls you down every single day. He handed you two keys. The first closes the door, the second locks it, and when you learn to use them together, something changes inside you. You feel it, you notice it. You stop living at the mercy of the emotional tides of the world. Are you ready to discover what these keys are? Are you willing to recognize where you've left your doors open? Then take a deep breath. Because what you're about to discover isn't just information, it's transformation. Let me tell you someone's story. I'll call her Anna, but she could be any one of us. Anna woke up every morning at 6 a.m., but never rested. Even with 8 hours of sleep, she opened her eyes with that strange sensation that she'd been moving all night, as if her soul had never actually rested. She blamed it on stress, on work, on modern life. Everyone feels this way, she thought. But it wasn't just physical fatigue. It was something deeper, more subtle. Anna felt as if she were carrying an invisible weight. She couldn't name it, couldn't locate it, She just felt it. It was like something was following her, watching her, draining her from the inside. She tried to ignore it, tried to be strong, but each day that feeling grew. In work meetings, Anna noticed something strange. The moment she walked into a conference room, she felt the tension in the air cling to her like a second skin. If someone was irritated, she absorbed that irritation. If there was conflict in the room, her chest tightened. Even if she had nothing to do with the problem, she left those meetings exhausted, as if she had been carrying the emotional weight of every person there. And no one around her seemed to notice. No one seemed to feel what she felt. She started avoiding certain people. She realized that after talking with some relatives, she felt completely emptied out, as if she had given something of herself without realizing it, as if something had sucked her dry. And the most disturbing part, she couldn't even say what had happened. The conversation could have been ordinary, trivial, but by the end, Anna felt hollow, empty, lifeless. At night, when she finally lay down in bed, hoping for rest, something worse happened. Thoughts invaded her mind. They weren't hers. She knew that. They were thoughts of fear, doubt, catastrophe, terrible scenarios about the future, distorted memories of the past, imagined conversations loaded with conflict. She tried to switch off her mind, but it was like trying to close a broken faucet. The more she tried, the more the thoughts poured out. Anna also had strange premonitions, odd intuitions. Sometimes she would wake up with a tightness in her chest, like something bad was about to happen. And often, something did. Not huge tragedies, but small conflicts, disappointments, heavy news. It was as if she picked up on emotional waves in the world before they actually unfolded. And that left her in a constant state of alert, anxiety, and fear of what might come next. She believed this was normal, that it was just sensitivity, just empathy. And in a way, it was. But it was also something more. Anna was living spiritually unprotected. She was moving through life with the doors of her soul thrown wide open, not realizing that everything around her was walking right in. Other people's emotions, intrusive thoughts, dense energies, invisible influences, everything came in, and nothing left until one day something changed. Anna was sitting in a cafe, staring out the window, when an older woman sat down at the table next to her. They exchanged glances. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a casual smile. It was the smile of someone who sees beyond the surface, someone who recognizes something others miss. After a few minutes of silence, the woman turned to Anna and said, in a voice soft yet firm, "You're walking through life with your heart unprotected." Anna froze. Those words touched something deep inside her. She didn't know this woman. She'd never seen her before. Yet somehow, that sentence described exactly what she'd been feeling for years. The woman continued, "You don't notice it anymore because you've gotten used to the noise. But Jesus already taught you how to guard yourself." Anna felt her eyes fill with tears. She wasn't expecting this. She wasn't expecting a stranger in a random cafe to touch a wound she'd been carrying in silence. And more than that, to mention Jesus in such a real way. So practical. Not as a distant religion, but as applied wisdom. They talked for nearly 2 hours. The woman, whom Anna learned was named Martha, spoke about inner vigilance, about how thoughts aren't neutral, about how other people's emotions can touch you, can invade you, if your spiritual door is open too wide. She explained that Jesus left clear instructions about this, but people lost the depth of his words. "Watch," Martha said, "doesn't just mean looking out for an enemy out there. It means watching yourself, what you think, what you feel, what you allow in. Because the truth, Anna, is this: most of the battles you're fighting didn't start inside you. They started somewhere else. You just absorbed them." Anna felt a chill run through her. That was exactly it. She had spent years battling thoughts and emotions that weren't born in her. She had blamed herself for feeling things she never chose to feel. She had exhausted herself trying to control something that, in reality, she simply needed to stop allowing in. Martha also talked about intentional words, about the power of speaking with awareness, with real faith, not just repeating empty phrases. You speak words, but your energy is saying something else. Martha explained, Jesus told us to pray believing. That's not poetry, Anna. That's spiritual technology. It's how you align your soul with what you're declaring. For the first time in a long time, Anna felt hope. Not some vague, distant hope, but something tangible, almost touchable. It was like discovering that the keys to lock the doors of her soul had been in her hands all along. She just didn't know how to use them. When Martha stood up to leave, she gently touched Anna's shoulder and said, Jesus gave you 2 keys. The first closes the door, the second locks it. Learn how to use them, and you'll never again live at the mercy of what doesn't belong to you. Anna left that cafe a different person. She still didn't fully know how to apply everything she'd just heard, but something inside her had awakened. For the first time, she understood that she didn't have to live drained, invaded, exposed, that Jesus had taught a path of spiritual protection she'd never seen clearly before. And in a way, that's the story of all of us. We live like Anna, tired, drained, absorbing the emotional weight of the world, convinced that this is inevitable, convinced that this is just how life is, but it's not. Jesus knew we'd be exposed. He knew the world would be heavy, dense, full of influences trying to pull us off center. That's why he didn't leave us on our own. He gave us tools, spiritual keys. But like any key, they only work when you use them consciously. Now let me show you the first of those keys. When Jesus said watch, he wasn't just warning you about external enemies. He was revealing a deep truth about the nature of human consciousness, that an unprotected soul is like a house without a doorman. Everything gets in, everything stays, and often you don't even realize you're no longer alone inside yourself. Watching is an act of elevated awareness. It is the capacity to notice what's happening inside you before you allow it to become part of you. It's recognizing that thoughts, emotions, and impulses arrive like visitors, and that you have the right and the responsibility to decide which ones get to stay. Ancient philosophers talked about this. The Stoics taught people to examine every thought before accepting it as true. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Eastern masters taught about witnessing the mind, observing without identifying, creating space between the self and its inner movements. But Jesus distilled all of this into a single word: watch. And that one word carries a complete spiritual technology inside it. Watching is not living tense. It's not being paranoid, suspicious, constantly on edge. On the contrary, watching is living awake. It's keeping the light on inside. It's like cleaning the glass of your soul so you can clearly see what's passing through. Because when you don't watch, you live in the dark. And in the dark, any shadow feels real. Let me give you concrete examples of what it means to watch in everyday life. You're in a conversation. Suddenly, you feel irritation rising inside you. But if you pause for a second and observe, you notice something strange. This irritation didn't come from anything you thought or truly felt. It just appeared. It came from outside. It was triggered by the other person's energy, by the tension in the air, by the tone of voice carrying something beneath the words. Without vigilance, you assume that irritation is yours. You act from it. You respond harshly. And later you regret it, without understanding why you reacted that way. But when you watch, you recognize, this feeling isn't mine. I didn't choose to feel this. It's just passing through me. And in that recognition, something powerful happens. You create distance. The feeling loses its grip. It doesn't dominate you because you refuse to identify with it. Another example, you're watching the news. One story after another, tragedy, violence, chaos, and without noticing, you start to feel anxiety building. Your chest tightens, your breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts about the future invade your mind, all of them dark. Without vigilance, you believe these thoughts are yours, that you're just being realistic, cautious, but in truth, you're being invaded. You're absorbing collective fear, dense energy being projected through those images and words. Watching is noticing that. It's realizing, wait, 5 minutes ago I was at peace. What changed? Oh, right. I allowed this energy in. And once you notice, you can choose. You can turn it off. You can protect yourself. You can return to center. One more. You're lying in bed trying to sleep. Suddenly thoughts start to crowd in. They're not calm, gentle thoughts. They're full of worry. Catastrophic scenarios about the future. Imagined arguments where you defend yourself or attack someone. Distorted memories of the past, loaded with shame or hurt, and you get pulled in. You start feeding these thoughts with more thoughts. You build entire stories in your mind. The more you feed them, the bigger they grow, and soon they've taken you over, making rest impossible. Without vigilance, you believe you have to resolve these thoughts, analyze them, plan around them. But the truth is that most of these thoughts don't need solving. They need to be recognized as intruders. They need to be seen, named, and dismissed. Watching is saying, I see you, but you're not me. You don't have permission to stay. That's the first key. And it works like an invisible shield, because think about it. The unwatched human mind is like an untended garden. Any seed that falls there will grow. Seeds of fear, anger, doubt, envy. Soon the garden is overrun with weeds, poisonous plants, thorns. And you look at it and think, why is my inner life so chaotic? Why can't I find peace? The answer is simple, because you never watched what was being planted. You never examined the seeds before letting them grow. Jesus knew this. He understood the vulnerability of the human mind. He knew we live in a world full of influences, emotional, psychological, spiritual. He knew that thoughts don't arise only from within. They come from outside too, from conversations, from environments, from people, from invisible energies moving all around us. That's why he said, watch. Not as someone warning about demons out there, but as someone who knows the greatest dangers rise within us when we're not aware of what we allow in. Watching prevents impulsive decisions. It prevents words that wound. It prevents habits that drain your energy. It prevents relationships that drag you down. Because when you watch, you notice before you act. You observe before you react. And in that space between stimulus and response, you find your freedom. Think about it. How many times have you done something you later regretted, not because you're a bad person, but because you acted on autopilot? You reacted to a thought or emotion without examining it. You let something inside you take over for a moment, and that moment cost you. Watching stops that. It creates a sacred pause, a conscious breath, a moment where you ask yourself, what I'm feeling, is it really mine? Is this thought serving me? Does this emotion deserve my attention? And here's the secret. Watching isn't repression. It's not denying what you feel. It's recognizing, naming, and choosing. It's saying, I see this fear. I acknowledge this anger. But I will not identify with them. I will not let them drive my actions. That is active spiritual protection. That is what Jesus taught when he said, watch. But here's something important. Watching alone is not enough. Watching closes the door. It creates a barrier, it gives you awareness, but to truly lock that door, to strengthen your inner field, you need the second key, because vigilance protects you from what tries to enter. But the second key strengthens what's already inside. It aligns, it anchors, it creates structure. Watching teaches you to observe. The second key teaches you to declare. And when those two forces come together, the awareness of watching and the power of intentional words, something extraordinary happens. You stop being an exposed soul and become a protected presence. You stop living at the mercy of the emotional waves of the world. You find your center, your axis, a peace within that no one can take from you. Jesus didn't just say, watch. He completed the phrase, watch and pray. And in that second word lies one of the greatest spiritual secrets humanity has ever received. Because prayer isn't what you were often taught it is. It's not repeating memorized lines. It's not saying beautiful words that never touch your soul. Prayer, in the way Jesus taught it, is aligning your words with your faith, your emotion, your deepest intention. He said, whatever you ask in prayer believing, you will receive. Notice the word believing. It's not just speaking, not just asking. It's believing as you speak. It's feeling the truth of the words as they leave your mouth, and that changes everything. Words without intention are just sound, empty vibration that dissolves into the air without touching anything. But intentional words, the kind that leave you charged with feeling, clarity, conviction, those words have power. They reorganize the energetic field of your life. How many times have you prayed for peace, but spent the whole day speaking words of anxiety? You asked for protection, but spoke like someone constantly vulnerable. You declared faith, but your words communicated fear. That's not hypocrisy. It's disconnection. It's living on spiritual autopilot. And when that happens, your prayer becomes an empty ritual. Jesus never taught people to pray mechanically. He taught them to pray believing. He taught that your words need to come from a deep place within you. They need to be aligned with what you truly feel and desire. They need to be true. Let me give you practical examples. You wake up in the morning. Your first thought is of heaviness, of burden. Without vigilance, you let that thought grow. Without intention, you say, this is going to be such a hard day. And with those words, you seal the experience. You program your emotional field for weight and struggle. And the day does become heavy, not because it had to be, but because you declared that it would be. Now imagine the same moment with vigilance and intentional words. You wake up. You notice the thought of heaviness. You recognize, this tiredness doesn't define my day. And then consciously you declare, I choose to be present. I choose clarity. I am guided and protected today. And as you say this, you're not just repeating, you're feeling it. You take a deep breath. You anchor that truth inside you. Your nervous system responds. Your energy reorganizes. Your emotional field aligns with what you've just declared, and the day truly shifts. Another example, you're about to walk into a difficult meeting. The air feels thick. Without protection, you go in and absorb everything, but with intentional words, you stop before you enter. You breathe and you declare, I'm stepping into this space protected. My peace is mine. Nothing that doesn't belong to me can cling to me. That's not arrogance. It's not denial. It's conscious protection. It's using your words to create a field around you. And when you do that with real intention, something changes. You walk in differently. People treat you differently. The energy responds to the frequency you just set. Jesus knew that words and emotions are inseparable. He said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You can't speak peace while your heart is vibrating with fear. You can't declare protection while your soul feels exposed. Words only gain power when they're aligned with your inner state. Most people pray with their mouths but doubt with their hearts. They ask with their words but contradict themselves with their thoughts. They declare faith but feel fear, and that's why nothing shifts, because divided words don't create, they just echo into emptiness. But when you learn to pray intentionally, when you pause, breathe, feel, and then speak from that deep place of inner certainty, then your words come alive. They stop being sounds. They become force. They become spiritual commands. They bring order to chaos. They strengthen your emotional field. Jesus demonstrated this constantly. When he spoke, things changed. Storms calmed. Illnesses disappeared. Not because he had some kind of magic power you could never have, but because he spoke with total inner alignment. There was no gap between what he said and what he felt. There was unity, pure intention. And that's why his words carried absolute power. And he taught you to do the same. He said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. He wasn't talking primarily about physical mountains. He was talking about the mountains inside you, the fears, the doubts, the traumas, and he showed you that your words, when aligned with true faith, can move those mountains. So here is the second key. Learn to speak intentionally. Learn to pause before you declare. Learn to feel before you ask. Learn to align your emotion with your words, because when you do that, your prayer stops being religious ritual and becomes spiritual technology. Now you understand the two keys separately. Watching teaches you to observe, to notice, to recognize what's trying to enter. Intentional words give you the power to declare, to align, to strengthen what should remain in you. But here is the secret. These two keys were never meant to be used separately. They were meant to work together. Jesus didn't say watch at one time and pray at another as unrelated ideas. He joined the two, watch and pray. And that conjunction, that and, is where the full power lives. You can watch all day long, notice everything that tries to invade, recognize strange thoughts. But if you don't speak intentionally, if you don't declare what should occupy that space, you stay only on defense. You're protected, but not strengthened. On the other hand, you can pray with passion and declare powerful words. But if you don't watch, if you don't see what's coming in, you create with one hand and tear down with the other. You declare peace in the morning, but absorb chaos throughout the day. It's their union that builds the full structure. It's watching to know what needs to be blocked and praying intentionally to reinforce what must grow. It's noticing the invasion and declaring the truth. It's recognizing fear and speaking peace. Watching is the shield. Intentional words are the sword, and Jesus gave you both. When you learn to use them together, you don't just survive spiritually, you thrive. Imagine your day with both keys in action. You wake up and watch. How am I? What thoughts are here? And then you declare, I choose clarity. This day belongs to me. You get into traffic. Anger rises. You watch. Is this anger worth my peace? Then you declare, I release this. It's a constant movement. Watch, declare, observe, align. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until it's no longer an effort. It's simply the way you live. Knowledge without application is like carrying keys in your pocket and never using them. So now I want to give you a simple method that takes just 2 minutes, but completely reorganizes your spiritual and emotional field. I call it the 2-minute method. It works in 5 steps: observe, name, breathe, declare, and seal. First step, observe, stop, close your eyes, notice what's happening inside you, what thoughts are circling, what emotions are present. Don't judge. Just observe. This is watching in action. Second step, name, give a name to what you found. I'm feeling anxious. There's fear here. I notice irritation. Naming pulls the emotion out of the shadows and into the light. What is named loses part of its power over you. Third step, breathe. Inhale slowly through your nose, counting to 4. Hold. Exhale through your mouth, counting to 6. Do this 3 times. Intentional breathing calms your nervous system and prepares your body to receive your words. Fourth step, declare. Based on what you named, declare the opposite intention. If you named fear, declare, I choose to trust, I am protected. If you named irritation, I choose peace. Feel it as you speak. Don't just repeat mechanically. Fifth step, seal. Finish with a phrase that anchors it. So it is done. Amen. That word closes the circle and communicates that what you declared stands. These 5 steps take about 2 minutes. The impact is profound. When you wake up, before getting out of bed, use the method. Observe how you woke up. Breathe. Declare, this day belongs to me. I walk through it with clarity. Seal, so it is. Before bed, observe the day that passed. Name what remains. Breathe. Declare, I release what doesn't serve me. I rest in peace. Seal, it is done. Before a difficult conversation, observe the fear. Name it. Breathe. Declare, I speak from my center. My words are clear. I remain in peace. Seal, walking into a heavy environment. Notice the resistance. Name it. Breathe. Declare, I enter protected. What is not mine cannot cling to me. Seal. When you feel drained, observe the emptiness. Name it. I've been drained. Breathe. Declare, I reclaim my energy now. Seal. You don't need complicated rituals, just 2 minutes of full awareness. And in those 2 minutes, you completely reorganize your inner field. The more you practice, the faster and more natural it becomes. Jesus taught watch and pray as a tool for spiritual survival. What I've just given you is the practical application of that. Start today. Choose a moment and use the method. Do it for a week. And watch how your life starts to change. So here we are, at the end of this journey, but not at the end of what it can mean for you. Because everything you've heard so far was not just information. It was an awakening, an invitation to recognize something that has always been available, but that you may have never seen clearly. You don't have to live exposed. You don't have to walk through life drained, invaded, at the mercy of everything and everyone around you. Jesus gave you the keys. They've always been in your hands. Remember the question that opened this video. What if you've been walking through life with 2 doors open? Doors Jesus already taught you how to close. Now you know that wasn't just a rhetorical question, it was a reality. Because most people live exactly like that, spiritually unprotected, emotionally exposed, absorbing everything around them without realizing there's another way to exist. But you're no longer one of those people, because now you know the 2 keys. You know that watching isn't paranoia, it's awareness. You know that praying intentionally isn't mechanical religion, it's spiritual technology. And you know that when you bring these 2 forces together, when you notice what's trying to enter and declare what's allowed to remain, you create around you a protection that doesn't come from charms, rituals, or luck. It comes from within. It comes from your own awakened consciousness. Jesus knew the world would be challenging. He knew you'd face emotional storms, relational conflicts, heavy environments, intrusive thoughts. He never promised life would be easy, but he did promise you wouldn't be left alone. And he kept that promise by giving you practical, simple, but profoundly powerful tools. Watch, pray, 2 words, 2 keys, 1 complete formula for spiritual protection. But here's the part that depends entirely on you. Knowing the keys is not enough. You have to use them. You can keep everything you heard here as interesting knowledge, a beautiful reflection that touched you for a few minutes, or you can turn it into living practice. You can wake up tomorrow and, before getting out of bed, use the 2-minute method. You can observe your thoughts throughout the day. You can declare intentionally before stepping into difficult situations. You can pause at night and seal your rest with conscious words. The choice is yours. It always has been. Because here's the thing, the spiritual protection Jesus taught is not passive. It doesn't happen automatically just because you believe in him or recited a prayer once. It's active. It requires awareness. It requires intention. It requires you to take responsibility for your inner life. And yes, that can feel heavy at first. But in reality, it's freedom. Because when you realize you have power over what enters and what stays inside you, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop blaming the world, other people, or their energy for how you feel. And you begin to see yourself as the guardian of your own soul, the doorman of your inner house. And in that position, holding these keys, you find something you've been searching for your whole life. True peace, the kind that doesn't depend on anything outside you, the kind no one can steal. So here is my final invitation. Don't let this be just another video you watched. Don't let these words evaporate in the busyness of your day. Choose one thing, just one, that you're going to start applying today. Maybe it's watching your thoughts when you wake up. Maybe it's declaring protection before you leave the house. Maybe it's breathing with intention before you fall asleep. Choose one and make it a habit, because it's in the small things, the simple things, repeated with awareness, that real transformation happens. And if at some point you forget, if you slip back into autopilot, if you realize your doors are open again, don't condemn yourself. Just remember, the keys are still with you. They always are. And you can use them at any moment. It doesn't matter how many times you've forgotten. What matters is that now you know. And knowing is the first step toward change. Jesus said, "Watch and pray." And when he said that, he wasn't laying down a religious rule. He was giving you a path to spiritual freedom, a path where you no longer have to live scared, drained, or invaded. A path where you can walk through this world protected, centered, and at peace. Not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you exist within it. So go. Use the keys, close the doors, lock what needs to be locked, strengthen what needs to grow, and discover for yourself what it means to live spiritually protected. Because when you live that way, everything changes. Your gaze, your presence, your energy, and the world which once felt far too heavy to bear becomes something you can walk through. Not because it became lighter, but because you became stronger. The keys are in your hands. They always have been. Now the question that remains is, will you use them?